It started as a beautiful day at the airport, filled with the excitement of new destinations. A young black girl, dressed in her best, approached the gate with a first-class ticket in hand. But instead of a warm welcome, she was met with a cold glare from the pilot. His words were sharp and clear. "First class isn't for people like you." The girl's smile faded as the weight of his words hit her. Passengers looked on, some in silence, others in quiet disapproval. Just when it seemed no one would speak up, a towering figure emerged from the crowd, her father. He wasn't just any man. As tension built and whispers filled the air, the truth about his identity would leave everyone speechless. What happens next will challenge prejudice and redefine the meaning of power and privilege. Stay tuned for a story of justice, courage, and an unforgettable twist. The crowd grew uneasy as the man walked confidently toward his daughter. Dressed in an understated suit, he carried an air of quiet authority. He placed a protective hand on her shoulder, his eyes steady and calm despite the growing tension. The pilot, standing rigid with a dismissive smirk, didn't back down. "Sir, this ticket must be a mistake," he said, his tone dripping with condescension. The father gave a measured smile, unfazed by the insult. "A mistake?" he asked softly, his voice carrying just enough weight to make those nearby lean in closer. The little girl looked up at him, her eyes filled with questions she was too young to ask. Passengers exchanged glances, sensing something bigger was unfolding but unsure where it would lead. Who was this man? And why did he seem completely undeterred by the pilot's behavior? With tension thick in the air, the answer was about to change everything. The pilot's eyes narrowed, frustration flashing across his face. "First class is reserved for those who meet certain standards," he muttered, his voice low, but sharp enough to sting. A few passengers gasped at the thinly veiled insult. The father, still calm, reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek leather wallet. "Standards, you say?" he repeated, a slight edge creeping into his tone. He calmly retrieved a business card, its logo gleaming under the terminal lights, and held it up. A curious hush fell over the crowd as people strained to see it. The pilot glanced at the card, and the color drained from his face. Meanwhile, the little girl clung to her father's side, her wide eyes darting between the adults. She couldn't fully grasp the weight of the moment, but she felt the tension crackling like static in the air. Murmurs rippled through the waiting passengers, speculation growing with every passing second. The truth, it seemed, was bigger than anyone had imagined. The pilot's hand trembled slightly as he held the card, his eyes darting from it to the man standing before him. The passengers grew restless, leaning in to catch every word. I didn't realize." The pilot stammered, his arrogance quickly unraveling. His gaze flicked nervously toward the airline logo on the card, a symbol of power that carried far more weight than his own authority. But the father didn't gloat. Instead, he remained composed, his steady presence commanding more respect than any raised voice ever could. The little girl tugged gently on his sleeve, her voice soft but filled with curiosity. "Daddy, why is he acting like that?" she whispered. Her question hung in the air, innocent yet heavy with meaning. The crowd watched, waiting for his response. The pilot shifted uncomfortably, his confidence shattered, but pride kept him from fully backing down. The tension reached a breaking point as everyone braced for what would happen next. Before the father could respond, a sharply dressed airline supervisor appeared, alerted by the growing commotion. She strode toward the gate with purpose, her eyes darting between the pilot, the father, and the watching crowd. "Is there a problem here?" she asked firmly, her tone cutting through the tension like a blade. The pilot hesitated, struggling to maintain control of the situation. "There was a misunderstanding," he muttered, but his words lacked conviction. The supervisor raised an eyebrow, her sharp instincts catching the unspoken truth. She took the business card from his hand, her expression shifting as she recognized the name printed on it. Her eyes widened. "Mr. Chambers," she said, her voice dropping to a more respectful tone. You own. The father gave a small nod, his calm never wavering. Yes, I do. The crowd gasped. The man who had been dismissed so easily was not just wealthy, he was the largest shareholder in the very airline, denying his daughter her rightful seat. A hush fell over the crowd as realization dawned on everyone. The pilot's smug demeanor crumbled, replaced by a pale, nervous expression. "Mr. Chambers, I didn't mean any disrespect," he began, but the father held up his hand. "There's no need for excuses," Mr. Chambers said firmly, "but there is a need for accountability." His words carried a calm finality, each one landing like a stone. He turned to his daughter and knelt beside her, smoothing her hair. "You belong wherever you choose to be. Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise," he whispered, his voice full of warmth. The supervisor, sensing the gravity of the moment, faced the pilot. "Please hand over your badge," she instructed coolly. Stunned silence followed as the man removed it with shaking hands. Just as the family prepared to board, the young girl looked up at her father with a mischievous smile. "Daddy, do you think we can buy ice cream on the plane too?" Laughter rippled through the crowd, a final reminder of innocence overcoming prejudice. The passengers erupted into applause as Mr. Chambers and his daughter made their way to their first-class seats, hand in hand. The moment felt bigger than a mere flight. It was a reminder that dignity and respect are not privileges to be earned, but rights that belong to everyone. As the plane prepared for takeoff, whispers of admiration filled the cabin. "That little girl taught us something today," a passenger murmured to his companion. "It's not about wealth or power, it's about standing up for what's right." Meanwhile, the pilot's departure cast a long shadow, a quiet lesson in humility and the cost of prejudice. The supervisor ensured the family was comfortable, offering a sincere apology that Mr. Chambers accepted with grace. As they soared into the sky, the girl leaned against her father, her heart light and her smile bright. The journey ahead was more than a flight. It was proof that kindness, courage, and truth always have a place in first class.